Hey everybody, welcome back to Rusty Wrench Restorations. I'm Steve, and today we're going to be working on the Bobcat 371. Now I know I got a lot of projects going on, and you're probably like, can you just pick one and stay with it? But that's not how I work. My order of importance just goes on whatever I feel like working for that day. So, we got the Kubota B7100, lots of stuff I want to do on this, and I will. I'll have videos on there. I still have to do all the fluids and filters and maintenance stuff. Obviously, when the weather warms up, all of these projects are going to need paint, whether it be the Kubota, the Cub Cadet Payroller, or the Bobcat. So you're just going to have to kind of deal with my crazy randomness, I guess. And, we'll do some videos, I guess, on all of them, kind of all at the same time. So today, my focus is on this thing. I did work on this a little bit a few days ago. And as you can see in the back here, the engine has been removed. I know I didn't record any of it. I do want to give you one tip though. When it comes to working on any skid steer, it doesn't matter if it's a Bobcat, John Deere, Case, whatever. If you're going to do some type of repower or engine swap, make sure before you get rid of the old engine, you remove whatever drive mechanism is on there for the powertrain. So I had a Case 1816 skid steer a few years ago that the engine had blown up on. The previous owner trashed it, only to find out that he threw away the crank pulley that drove the belts to move the machine. And that pulley is kind of a hard part to get, and they go for around $400. So I did ensure that I removed the pulleys from this one. There's actually 3 different pulleys here, a large one, a medium, and a small one. So the small one basically runs the hydraulic pump, which is this pulley right here, and that's what's going to drive your hydraulics for the loader and the bucket. And then the medium and the large pulley were for the drivetrain. Now this one's set up kind of different here. You can see 2 pulleys in the front, and then this kind of idler with a tensioner, manual tensioner. So basically what those 2 pulleys were for, the larger one and the medium, it's a 2-speed drive for this. So, a big pulley in the back, small pulley in the front, or a big pulley in the front, small pulley in the back will give you your high and low speed for this machine. So I'm not going to put the same engine back in. I'm going to put the Kubota 3-cylinder diesel engine in it. That's the plan. I think it's going to fit. It should work. We'll see. The old one that came out, I think it was the original Kohler 14 horse. Here it is over here. It's basically just gonna go to scrap. I was just gonna try to get it running, and I took the carb off. And if you've ever rebuilt a carburetor, you'll know that the throttle plate and the choke plate have these little Phillips screws, and they tend to usually get stuck in there, and they're hard to get out. So needless to say, I snapped all 4 of them. So at that point, if I was going to try to rebuild the carburetor, I'd have to put money into a carb rebuild kit. The plug and wires and coil, everything just looked terrible on it. So I just didn't even want to waste my time or money trying to get that engine running, knowing that ultimately I'm going to put this little diesel engine in there. So that engine's scrap. I did save the pulleys. Make sure you save your pulleys if you do a repower. So that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. The engine is gone. There's a cover on here that I need to remove to get to the fuel tank that's underneath. I can only imagine that thing's pretty rusted out and nasty. Basically today all I want to do is kind of get this thing moved into the middle. So we'll use Bozo to help get this thing where we need it. I don't need the bucket on here right now. It's a liability. It's in my way. So we're going to go ahead and take that off. It's got this quick attach system, which may or may not work. Let's see if we can. That may have actually worked. Is that moving the pins? It's not moving the pins. All right. Well, I'm going to work on that, and we'll get the bucket removed and get that up and out of the way. And I think I might even end up taking this cage off just because it's one less thing that I have to work around. But just basically want to get this out into the work area so I can see what we're dealing with here. I'm thinking, you know, the fuel tank is under this plate, kind of goes into a little recessed area here, and I think I'm going to need that area for the oil pan. Those Kubota engines have a pretty lengthy oil pan at the bottom, so I may end up having to kind of just remove this plate, fab up a new mounting plate for it. You know, we'll get some good motor mounts for it, and then I'll just relocate the fuel tank somewhere else, because like I said, I'm sure this one's junk anyway, and I could use the room. Now I could kind of build a plate where the oil pan sits up on this area. That's going to raise the engine up. That engine weighs 400 pounds, and as with anything, the higher you go with weight, the more off center that center of gravity is, and prone to tipping. And a small little skid steer like this, I want to try to keep as much of the weight as low as possible. So yes, having a fuel tank in a remote location would also change that weight possibly, but the 400-pound engine I think is going to make a bigger difference. So anyway, let's get Bozo started, get this bucket off and get this thing moved around and see what we're dealing with today. All right, well, this quick tack thing doesn't work too quick. So this goobered up rod that was welded on there by Helen Keller broke off, and it seems like these two pins are stuck. Been hammering on them there with the 5-pound sledge, and they don't move too much. So I think I'm just going to disconnect the whole front bucket here from the tilt cylinder and the arm, and just take the whole kit and caboodle all at once. Now that we got that off, we'll go ahead and spray all these connections down with some Croil, so that eventually when I get back to this, hopefully it'll be a little easier to work on. Well, we got things a bit more organized. The bucket's obviously up and out of the way. Don't need to deal with that until spring when we paint and reinstall. I've got a little easier access now for my tilt and roll cylinders. Of course, we're going to rebuild the lift ones as well. I haven't decided yet if I want to take this cage off yet. I mean, it's going to come off eventually anyway, so that we can get this thing painted in the spring. It might be worth just pulling off to get out of the way, because eventually I need to access this whole area here. This whole panel is going to come off to inspect the chains and sprockets that are inside there, and to look at these clutches to see what kind of condition they're in. So yeah, I'll probably end up just stripping it down, to be honest with you. We'll get the cage off, and I may as well just go ahead and remove the loader arm assembly. That'll give me full access to this, just like we did with Skitty. And I slid the Kubota engine over, and I think we're going to be good. There's definitely plenty of room there, at least, you know, width wise. I think, like I said, I'm going to remove this plate, remove the fuel tank. As you can see, the bottom of this Kubota engine has a considerable drain pan. It's probably a good 4 inches. So, you know, if I set this engine on mounts on top of here, you know, That's going to raise the engine up, which increases my center of gravity height. So if I pull this tank out, because just by the looks of the top of it, I know the thing's going to be junk. I mean, it smells like varnish inside. I'm sure the thing's rotted out. There may not even be any fuel in there, which would actually be pretty good. But I'm hoping I got a nice little void here. We can set that oil pan down inside, and I can make an access hole from the bottom to access the drain plug. But I think we're going to be good as far as lining up for the belt pulley. For some reason, if I need to make some room, this corner here and this corner here can actually get notched out, because all it is just a kind of a square fender well area here. So we could always curve that and give us some more room in here to play with. But I really don't think we're going to need to do that, because even if this engine comes all the way to the back, there's still a guard that goes here. So the only thing I think I'm going to have to contend with, obviously, is cooling, because the fan is going to be sideways and the radiator sideways. Well, that's just not going to get much airflow. So I think I'm going to have to do some sort of electric pump. I'm sorry, electric pump. So I don't know if I'll get enough airflow with an electric fan with the radiator on the side. I may end up just having to reroute the cooling and put the radiator on the back with the fan there. I think the fan is definitely gonna be something I need to incorporate. So if you look over here, this is kind of the back cage area. I just got it set up on here. Lift it up. But this is the guard for the back, so really even the radiator could sit inside here with the fan and it's protected. I mean, obviously I don't want to be backing into big things, but I think that's going to work. So, you know, not a huge horsepower improvement. I mean, this thing came with a 14 horse Kohler engine. This Kubota is 16, if I believe, but I think it's a little more torquey. Sounds cool, and I'm sure the RPMs are going to ramp up a little better and a little quicker. I think it's going to do just fine in this machine. I tell you, getting those cages off is never an easy feat by yourself. But with it removed, gives us a whole lot more room for activities. So I think what we're going to dive into next is getting this rear cover off and pulling out this old tank and seeing what kind of mess we got to deal with there. I don't think there's anything actually holding this on, with the exception of these hoses that need to get out of the way. Like I said, I think this tank is probably going to be pretty nasty inside. Oh man. Could be wrong. It looks dry actually, at least from there. It smells terrible. I think this is just sitting on here, wedged underneath. There we go. Ew, man. Oh, that's disgusting. Got some nasty bugs in there. Look like cockroaches. Disgusting. Alright, well, ugh. I guess this is like some foam to keep it from vibrating. Nice little hiding spots for these buggers. That's nasty. Alright, this should... Oh man. Is it full or is it rusted? I can't get it to move. I think it might be rusted in there. Let me get something to wedge in there. Should be interesting. Ooh, it's just stuck to the bottom. Oh, okay. There's probably another rubber mat over there too. Move this junk out of the way. I hate the smell of old varnished fuel. It's terrible. It's got like a sweet smell, but it's not a good one. Ah. Some cryptic spiders. Interesting. Alright. so it's definitely got some fuel in it. So I'm gonna hang on to this for now because it does have fuel, so there's no holes in it. It, believe it or not, could possibly be reused after I clean it, but out here for right now. See what we're dealing with down here. Oh, a whole bunch more of those cockroach bugs. Interesting.
Brother,
Ew.
What's that?
Ew.
What's that, brother?
Alright. So, like I said, I think we're going to try to get the engine to sit down in here as much as we can to keep the center of gravity low, because again, that's 400 pounds. If it's up here or if it's down here, it's going to make a difference. So the lower the better. And then you know, I'll just probably cut a access hole out of this and so we can get to a drain plug, but that gives us a lot of room. So I started looking at this and I'm realizing that this jack shaft needs to spin in the forward direction. So I guess if you're looking at it from the side, that would be counterclockwise. And then when I'm looking at the engine here, I think it spins the wrong way, because looking at the angle of these fan blades, I would assume it's going to spin clockwise. Just because of the way the fan, you know, to pull through the radiator and blow across the engine. That belt's loose, needs to be replaced. Anyway, so I think this is turning the wrong direction. So my remedy to that, I think, and I don't know because I've never taken one of these apart before. Anyway, this is that jack shaft that I was telling you about. And as you can see, it goes clear through to the other side. There's like a pillow bushing there, and there's nothing there. I've got basically the same amount of room between the frame and this case as I do on this side. So I'm wondering if I can't get the pulleys to this side instead, because then I could flip the engine around and it would spin the correct direction. And I'm wondering if even this whole shaft, if once I take the chains off, I can kind of lift it out, turn it 180 and drop it back in. That has yet to be seen. I have no idea. I've never taken any of this design apart before, so I don't know. But as of right now, this engine spins the wrong way for this application. So we'll figure something out. We'll get it resolved. Don't really know if that's gonna work or not, but we'll see. So in order to get access to that cover to look at that jack shaft, I need to remove this control valve. This control valve has linkages that go down to the foot pedals, and that's what controls your loader. Let's see, I think the left one's a loader up and down, and the right one is the bucket roll and tilt. So I'll disconnect those linkages down there because they're kind of tight for me to get in here, and then we'll disconnect the supply and return hydraulics, and we'll disconnect the hydraulic lines. Actually, I'll probably leave them hooked up here. I'll disconnect everything back here, and then we can kind of take that whole plate off. There's 4 bolts here. Take the plate and the dash panel here kind of all out as one assembly, and that'll open all this up, and hopefully we can get in here to see what this jack shaft looks like. I'm hoping we can just flip the thing 180. That would make my life so much easier. Let's see what we're dealing with. Let me do that, and I'll get you back because that's kind of boring to watch. Got the control valve assembly out. I was able to get the 2 pins out of the bottom down there at the foot pedals, and yeah, that's the control valve for sending hydraulics up to the loader arms. So unfortunately, this jack shaft area is covered. I think the only way to get to that or to see it is going to be to take this cover off. So this whole piece here comes out to access the chain drive. And then I guess in order to get these pulleys off, we'll have to remove these fenders. And I think I got to pull them off anyway because I can't get to some of these nuts that are under here. It's just going to be a pain. So I actually started taking the fender off. There was 2 bolts down here in the front, or 2 nuts, and there's another one in the back here, and then there was one that was on the side, so it's already loose. Let me zoom this out a bit. It's already loose, but of course things are in the way, like the lift cylinder and all that. I mean, at the end of the day, all this stuff's got to come off anyway. This whole thing is going to get taken down to pretty much nothing. Alright, so it's the next day for me, and you know, as I realized this jack shaft, you can't reach it from here. We'll have to access this panel, which, you know, in order to get to, we got to take the fenders off. So basically this whole thing's coming down to the frame. However, I do want to show you a couple things. First, this is that jack shaft I was telling you about, and I just want to kind of show you how this works, because this is different from any of the other skid steers I've had before. So basically, when the engine's running, it's turning this jack shaft, and of course me turning it like this is simulating it, and it's going really slow. But as I push this lever forward, I don't know if you'll see it on the camera, but you can see the machine start to move forward. Now when I come back, it's back into a neutral position, still spinning in the same direction. I pull this lever back, and it's gonna start moving the machine backwards. So that's how the clutches work inside. So this jack shaft is always gonna spin in this over the top forward direction, and it's just a matter of which way we're pulling the clutches to steer, left and right. So both forward, both back, a right turn and a left turn. Anyway, it's important that we don't have to mess with this any more than we have to. So to kind of redo the shaft and move spacers and get this flipped around is kind of a pain. So I got fortunate yesterday and I found the Holy Grail. So as you saw in one of the other videos, the crankshaft from the engine had 3 pulleys coming off the side of it. I just got them kind of stacked here. We had the small one, which was on the inside most to the center line of the tractor, and that drives the auxiliary pump, the hydraulic pump for the loader operations. And then there's 2 other pulleys, a medium and a large, and those are for your drive, right? So the drive mechanism for this has 2 belts, a large pulley in the back mated with a small pulley in the front, and a small pulley in the back mated with a large pulley in the front. So that's what gives you your high speed and low speed, kind of like a 10-speed bike, right? You've got the 2 or 3, you know, sprockets in the front. They're a little bit larger size. Those are your drive sprockets. It's what your feet are turning. And then they go back to your driven sprockets, which are the really small ones through your larger ones. 10 speed, 12 speed, they probably got more than that now. But anyway, so shifting that chain over to those different ratios will make it easier to pedal or harder to pedal, and give you higher speed or more torque depending on what it's in. It's like selecting a gear in a transmission. It's exactly the same thing. So the problem we ran into yesterday was putting this engine, or looking at how it's going to sit in there. The engine spins the wrong way, right? So that jack shaft pulley needs to go over the top, or if you're looking at it from the left side, it would be or from your view, a counterclockwise rotation. But the fan on this engine spins the opposite way. It's a counterclockwise rotation for you and for me. I guess looking at it from this direction, clockwise for you, sorry. So they're not the same. So the only way to fix that is either to spin the engine and have the drive on the other side, which I was trying to do, or we can spin the engine and try to find an adapter for the other end of the engine. Now what's neat about these Kubotas is there's typically a coupling on what would be your front end of the engine on, like say, an automobile, your crank pulley, which runs all your accessories, your alternator, your power steering pump, your air conditioning, all that. On your car, your truck, the back portion of the crank is attached to the flywheel, which goes to either a clutch or a torque converter, depending if you have a manual transmission or automatic. These little Kubotas are no different. The flywheel is there, and they have some adapter holes for different applications. As I was cleaning up yesterday afternoon, I went into the garage and I realized that I have this adapter pulley from the other Kubota project. This came off the 2-cylinder Kubota diesel that we put in the Kubota Cadet. Now this, in its lawn tractor application, was on the back of the engine, which to a normal mechanic would be the flywheel for your clutch or your torque converter. On the Kubotas, they're a little bit different. The front is actually the back. That's typically what drives to the transmission. And then the back of the engine, which is really in the front, is what drives things like this, these belts that go down to the mower deck, right? So it's like a mule drive. And I didn't need this for the Kubota Cadet because, well, I wasn't cutting grass with it. But I saved it. So me hoarding this pulley has saved me hundreds of dollars in materials and numerous hours of fabrication trying to flip that jack shaft over to the other side. So now we can simply flip the engine and have this pulley mounted to the flywheel on the left hand side. And I'll show you, it's amazing. These two pulleys are the same size and distance from each other that's on the Bobcat. Now I'm going to do the best I can to try to simulate this for you. This end is the flange that's going to go on the flywheel of the engine. Of course it'll be in the back, but I just want to show you how these pulleys line up. So we've got the two sections for the high and low speed. Now this pulley that was on the Kubota is the same. So it doesn't matter if the belt's on this side or this side. These are both going to be spinning at the same speed or ratio. The only thing that's going to change is up here on the jack shaft. We've got one that's a little bit bigger and one that's a little bit smaller. So I have to do a little thinking real quick. Is this going to make my machine move faster or slower? Alright, I took some pulley measurements to see if we can figure out some ratios, and it's not going to give us our speed of how fast the machine's going to move, but what it will tell us is how fast this jack shaft will spin. So the two different size pulleys on here, the small one is a 7-inch and a large one is a 9-inch. Remember, this 7-inch small one is on the outside. So when it came to these three that were stacked, this large one was on the outside, which is also 7-inch. So when I'm in the, I guess that would be the slow speed, no, that would be the high speed. It's basically a 1-to-1. So a 7-inch drive pulley to a 7-inch driven pulley, whatever the engine RPM is going to be what the jack shaft RPM is. Now when I shift it to the larger pulley on the inside, which now goes to this medium one, which would be on the inside. So again, smaller on the driven end, bigger on the, smaller on the drive end, bigger on the driven end. I'm probably making this more confusing than it needs to be. Is going to slow down speed and increase torque. So these pulleys were, let's see, I think this was 7-inch and this was a 5-inch. Again, this is for the aux pump, so it doesn't matter. So 7 and 9 driven and 7 and 5 drive. So this little sheet here, this is all just kind of notes I was taking, but basically the OEM engine, which was the 14 horse Kohler single, idles at 1800 and max, as they say, is about 3600. So with the first speed setting at idle, that jack shaft is 1000 RPM. If I put it to the other belt, it goes up to 18. And then at max RPM, you go from 2000 to 36. So for the OEM Kohler engine, you're looking at a jack shaft RPM of 1000 to 3600. All right, so just keep those two numbers in mind, 1000, 3600. Now the Kubota, it's about the same. It idles down a little lower, 1000, and it still has the max 3600. But now we're getting rid of this 7-to-7 ratio. Okay, these pulleys here are both the same, and they're 3.5 inches as measured by my DeWalt tape measure. All right, so we kind of did the same thing. So idle on the larger pulley, so the 9-inch, which is the inside, to the 3 1/4, and then the 7, which is on the outside, to the 3 1/4. We go from 500 to 536. That's a considerable difference here, half and more than half. And then at the max RPM, we go from 15 to 1929. So again, not quite half, we're getting a little more, but not as much. So min and max, the Kohler was spinning that jack shaft from anywhere from 1000 to 3600 RPM. and the Kohler is now 500 to 1929, so almost 2,000. So we're losing 1,600 RPM at that jack shaft at max speed, and at idle we're losing 500. We're cutting it in half. So I don't know how that translates once you get that jack shaft into the drive sprockets and clutches and axles. Like, I don't know what the RPM, the jack shaft RPM to the wheel RPM, I don't know what that ratio is. I'm sure it's in the book. I'm sure I could find out, but I'm going to go with it's basically going to cut it in half or not quite as much. So whatever the top speed on this is, if I leave that pulley configuration, it's going to be about half. Now, I'll be honest with you, when I work around this area with these skid steers, I never have the RPM up all the way. It's just too fast for around here. However, that's typically where your horsepower is, that's where you're making your most torque, and that's kind of where the engines want to run. The last thing you want to do, especially with a diesel engine, is lag it or lug it and keep it down in the idle, trying to work it into idle. You don't want to do that. So I think it actually benefits me. I think it's going to allow me to ramp up the RPM and keep that engine running efficiently where it wants to be, but yet it's going to allow me to move around here a little slower. So again, like I said, we're just going to have to get this engine in, get it mounted, and try it out and see what happens. And if it doesn't work or just seems too slow, then not really a big deal. Like I said, we'll just we'll take this pulley to a machine shop. We'll have them machine these two pulleys off the flange, and we'll weld some new ones on, because this is the flange that we want. It already fits my flywheel. So that's where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and finish stripping down the skid steer. I'm going to get the loader arms off, the fenders, that front chain case area, and just make it a whole lot easier for us to work on and easier for you to see what I'm trying to video. We don't have all these extra, what's the word I'm looking for? Interferences. We don't have all these interferences in the way. So that'll be the next step. So next video, hopefully I'll have this stuff stripped down and we can start fabricating a mounting plate for the engine and getting it in and lined up and figuring out where it's going to work. Once we get that in, we can run the engine and drive it. So obviously we won't have the hydraulics hooked up, but we'll at least be able to move the machine forward and back and steer it left and right and kind of see how it's going to perform, to see if we need to change those pulleys. Now, as far as the hydraulic pump goes, obviously it's not going to be able to be driven off the same left-hand side of the machine because there's only two drive pulleys. However, I think we already talked about this. This pump is just a little pump. It's got two mounting bolts, not a big deal. We can put that over here on the other side, and I'll run it off this end of the engine. I'll get a pulley for that side, and we'll just move the hydraulic pump from the left side to the right side, and I think we'll be good to go. The only thing I'll have to change is, these suction and return hoses, which that's easy. That's easy money. Not a problem there. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video as far as getting the skid steer somewhat stripped down and kind of trying to figure out where we're going to go with this project as far as getting this Kubota engine in. And hopefully next one we can make some money and get this engine mounted up and see what she does. Alright, I appreciate the support. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It's absolutely free and ensures you don't miss any of the amazing action we got going on here at Rusty Wrench Restorations. Alright, have a good one.